Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the course code Eng455, lecture number 20. As you can see that we are going to talk about language today, and specifically language, because in our previous lectures from lecture 3 to lecture 19 we discussed about different levels of language from phonetics to pragmatics in detail. So today's lecture is basically a recap of all the information that we have done so far with respect to language and levels of language. So what is the focus of today's lecture? Let's see. Today we are going to discuss and revise our knowledge about what language is. There are the number of definitions provided by different linguists and philosophers about the nature of language, about what language is, and we will discuss these definitions today. After that we will talk about some of the important features of language. These features not only include the design features that were proposed by Hockett to discriminate between animal communication and human communication, but it would also include some minor features of the language which are as important as well the other features are. And then there is something new that I have added in today's lecture, that is origin of language, that was missing in our beginning lectures, that how the language it actually originated. And now then we will discuss some of the theories regarding the origin of language, that how language it was originated, whether it was a single language that later on been divided into different categories, or were there different types of languages already there, and then what were the needs that made human beings to communicate and to develop a tool for communication. Since the old civilization time, since the Stone Age time, during the Stone Age time, as the English linguists and majority of the linguists and philosophers, they believe that in beginning the human beings, they were without language. I'm talking about the Stone Age man, and then they acquired language for certain purposes, and then the language it kept on improving, and then we have today what is the most modern form of language. After that we will talk about some language levels. As I told you that from lecture 4 to lecture 19 we discussed in detail about the different levels of language, but today we will revise our knowledge to discuss what are these levels and how do they work, what are their scopes, and what they are all about. So let's start our today's lecture. Language. The start we have taken from what language is, actually the different definitions provided by different linguists and philosophers. The first definition provided by Edward Sapir, 1921. If you remember, the Edward Sapir is the same linguist who worked with Benjamin Lee Wolff, and presented the Edward Sapir-Whorf hypothesis about the nature of relationship between language and culture, or language or thought, some like this way. So in the definition of Sapir you will see that we would focus on the nature of language as related to as a comprised of system. So what's the definition by Sapir is, language is primarily human and non-instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions and desire by means of a system of a voluntarily produced symbol. From the previous lectures it is very much clear right now on the lectures on phonetics. You should be very much clear that what is meant by these voluntarily produced symbols, how we produce these symbols. These are actually the phonetic symbols. These are the sounds that we produce with the help of different speech organs, and these symbols, these sounds, they vary according to the places and manner of articulation, and according to the voicing as well. So this way, but why we use language? to communicate our ideas, emotions, feelings, desires, and so many things that we use to communicate with the help of language, then it is purely human. Definitely, if you remember our lecture on that how language, we can specifically call the human way of communication as language and not the animal's way of communication. Mean, with a question mark, it is so far established that whatever the human communication is, that can be regarded as language. So it is purely human. And non-instinctive method refers to the process that we are not, every time we are talking, we are not consciously doing it, we are not instinctively talking, rather it is subconscious, or it is unconsciously that we keep on talking about different things. For example, you have to get up early in the morning and you do not plan your thinking. You do not have to say, okay, mama, I'm ready, I'm here. So you do not plan everything. It is not as that always you plan for certain things and then talk about different things. This is almost the non-instinctive method of communication. So this was the definition by Sapir. Then let's see what was the definition by Henry Sweet, presented in 1993. Language may be defined as the expression of thought by means of speech sounds. Once again, the focus is on the speech sounds, that the speech sound, once again, the sounds produced with the help of vocal organs and perceived with the help of auditory organs, and with the help of these organs, the sounds, the sounds produced by specifically by human beings, it is regarded as language. And it is basically what it is, the expression of thought. Mean, whatever is it, because otherwise if we do not have a language, whatever we are thinking, that would stay with us. We are never ever going to communicate. We won't be able to communicate this thinking process to you people. Now over here, keep this thing in mind, that sometimes that even the deaf and dumb people, they can also communicate their thoughts, but again their language is their symbols of language are something different, mean specifically regarded as sign language. So once again, language is comprised of sound, symbols with respect to human beings, and it is the mode of expression of your thoughts, your feelings, and your desires. Let's see some more definitions about language. Then we have some more definitions, like Encyclopedia Britannica. It defines language as a system of conventionally spoken or written symbols. Again, conventionally, what are approved. As you know that human beings, they are able to produce different types of sound, but with respect to every language, if you remember the IPA chart, the International Phonetics Alphabet, they have picked certain sounds out of the sound that human beings they produce. They have categorized them, they have symbolized them according to the languages, because in every set of language, in every language, there are certain sets of symbols that are approved for that language. For example, in English we have 26 alphabet and 44 sounds. Similarly, in other languages we have a different number of alphabets and sound. So these are conventionally approved sound symbols. Not that all the sound symbols that are produced by human beings can be regarded as language, but again there is a restriction, that is conventionally approved symbols. And not only the language in the spoken form, in verbal form, but also the language in written form. Mean the written symbols that talk about the alphabets, and the spoken symbols that talks about the phonetic symbols. So these both type of phonetic and orthographic symbols, they are regarded as language. But again, conventionally, what are regarded as the part of a specific language, what are approved by a language, and these are the sounds that can be included in only that language. Now further, by means of which, now language is a tool, language is a device, and what do you do with this device is that by means of which human beings as members of social group and participants in its culture communicate. Once again, the stress is on the idea of communication, that a language is a tool for communication, a means of communication. And again, the focus is on the use of human beings, because every linguist, they refer to it again and again in their definition of languages. They talk about that language is a phenomena with respect to human beings. So in almost all definitions, you will see that they would restrict itself to the human beings. This process of language production would be only and only fixed with the human beings. And once again, the new thing in this definition is that human beings as participants of a society, human beings as the members of a social group, and the participants in its culture. That because, as you know, that human beings nowadays, they are divided into societies, and in every society there are a specific set of patterns that are followed. There is a defined culture that is associated with every society. So within that society, we need language to communicate, because this is the tool that is basically used to grow our social relationships as human beings, as individuals. They might not be in need of language as much as they need language as a members of social group, because when you are alone, you can think on your own, you can sit and because the ideas, they are coming into your mind and you are thinking, you can, without any language, you can have your individual life. But within the set of society, you have to communicate. You need a tool to communicate yourself, and that's why the language, it has a more importance as a social activity, as an activity to communicate within your social group. So this way, this new perspective in this definition was added, that is of social setup, that language is a tool used in social setup that is more needed in social setup. Then another definition by Noam Chomsky, a very well-known linguist, 1957, then what he said about the language. According to Noam Chomsky, language is a set of finite number of sentences, each finite in length and constructed out of finite set of elements. Once again, in the definition of Chomsky, the word finite is very important, because if you remember the Chomsky idea of transformational generative grammar, it talks about the transformations and generations of a finite number of sentences. If you remember, what was the definition? The sentences, all and only those sentences. So once again, the sentences which are structurally valid, which are meaningful. Such sentences, for production of such sentences in any language, we have set of certain rules that we need to follow. Yes, the rules that tell us how to make questions, how to put statements, and how to make passive sentences. So we have rules, we follow those rules, and with the help of those finite number of rules, we construct sentences. But again, some linguists, they oppose this definition of Chomsky with respect to the word finite, because according to them, in language, the number of sentences cannot be finite. We keep on producing our novel utterances, and the human creativity element is not present with respect to this definition. But human beings, they can produce number of sentences which are not there already in any language. So the creativity factor, it goes beyond the focus with respect to this definition. But on the other side, this definition has certain points. For example, the Chomsky was the first one who realized the importance of the structural importance of a language. That language, it has certain structure, and it is created according to certain rules. But once again, what is the flaw is that that it does not talk about, it does not permit the creativity factor in language. So According to these standard definitions, what we come to know so far, that language in most simple words is just, we can simply say that it is a tool of communication. As we have seen in the previous definition, especially in the definition of encyclopedia, Britannica Encyclopedia, it was clearly mentioned that it is communicative device. Language is basically communicating device that is used in a proper social setup. Then what else we can say, that it is a medium of transfer, medium to transfer. Yes, it is a tool with the help of which we transfer. What we transfer? The ideas, the thoughts, the feelings, emotions, the desire. So many things are there which we communicate, which we transfer with the help of ideas. And even, you know, that what we transfer, we even transfer the whole culture, a whole set of beliefs and traditions within a culture to a next language. We tell them with the help of our language, okay, what is there in our culture, what is the beauty of our culture, what are the specific things in our culture, and we transfer them, these things, to our next generation. So it is something, it is a device to transfer. Then what else we can say, that language is the most specific human tool. Once again, that same idea that language is primarily human, primarily and finally human. I mean, again, the surety is not always there with respect to science, because every day there are new discoveries, there are new experiments, there are new improvements and researches made by linguists. So maybe one day in our future, maybe, I mean, with again a question mark, we can say that maybe in future we can have a human-animal communication as language, some type of language as well. But so far, only we are talking about the human language, because the language is specifically human behavior. And what else is, language is the biggest need of life on earth. Yes, we need water to live, we need food to live, we need shelter, we need so many things to have our life. But to have all these things, we primarily need language. It is the biggest need of life on earth. Without, think about a silent world. If you have seen a movie, I Am the Legend, any English Hollywood movie, it is I Am the Legend, where the whole world, because of certain phenomena, it gets, they are dead, and only a single member is there. A single person, he who stays alive over there, and he is very much stressed, because he is unable to communicate with everyone. He has food, he has shelter, he has everything, but he is again stressed, he is depressed, he is getting mad, because there are no people around him to communicate. So it is, we can say that it is some sort of language, is some sort of biggest need, because this is the tool with which we can communicate, with which we can have our social life, on the basis of which our culture evolved. Everything, the beauty of life is basically because of this language. So to conclude with what language is, it is a human tool of communicating ideas, beliefs and desires, emotions, and it is the biggest human need to have a beautiful life on earth. The next, features of language. Now the features of language, they talk about that what are the things that make a language purely human, specifically human. And over here, the features that I'm talking about are the design features, the idea of design feature that was presented by Charles Hockett. If you remember, in our third lecture, we talked about that language communication versus animal communication. Might be our second lecture. I'm not exactly having the knowledge, but that was a pure total lecture on human communication versus animal communication. And we talked about Charles Hockett, and we talked about different features. Almost we talked about 15 features to distinguish between human communication and animal communication. And we found out that what are the features which are commonly found in both types of communication, and what were the features which were purely human, which were purely the aspect of human communication. and so these design features, the American linguist Charles Hockett, but here I have picked only 8 design features. Now these 8 design features proposed by Charles Hockett are more clear indication to compare, more clear way, a method to compare human communication with animal communication. And the first one was use of sound signals. Again, the sound signals that we communicate with the help of certain sounds. Definitely, if you have, if you revise your knowledge of phonetics, the human language, it is based up of, actually, it is based up of certain symbols, sound symbols. And with respect to every language, certain sounds, they are there. Most of the time we will see that the sounds in all languages, majority of the language sounds, they are common and they are same, but only few language sounds are there. I mean, in every language 10-12 sounds are there which makes one language different from other. For example, we have sound like ta in Urdu, but we do not have a sound like ta in English, rather tha. Te, the word ta sound is specifically mean in Urdu and not in English, and rather in English we have the word, we have the sound ta. Similarly, in Arabic there is no sound pa, and it is specifically in Urdu sound that we have the pa sound. So this way there are certain sound symbols, and we communicate with the help of sound symbols. Yes, if we analyze our language, if we analyze our language to the smallest level, at the least level, what we will find? The language made up of sound. So the use of sound symbol is there, that characterize a language. Then arbitrariness, that there is no one-to-one relationship between the word that we use and the meanings that words have. For example, if I say a word in English, chair, and I meant by word chair that something that I always used to sit on, but in Urdu we do not call it chair, we will call it kursi. So again the same thing, but the two different words are used in two different languages. So it means we can say that there is no one-to-one relationship between the real object and the word that we use to specify it. So this is what is called arbitrariness, and it is usually the most appropriate feature found in human language. Then we have idea of need for learning. As human beings, so we need to learn language. The children, when they are there, in the very early stages of their life, they start picking sound, they start picking words, and then they start learning language. So we have the need to learn language, and we do not only learn our native languages, but at the same time we learn the languages, other languages. Like in a multilingual society in Pakistan, we do not only pick our native language, that is Punjabi, we also learn our national language, Urdu. At the same time, we learn English language as a lingua franca, because it is the means to get higher education and to get job, and so many things that are associated with it. So this way we learn language, and we do not only learn one type of language, rather we can learn number of languages. And this is usually nowadays, this idea of language learning is getting very much popularity, because the world is shrinking. The people, they are getting closer to each other. So we need to communicate not at our community level, but beyond our community as well. Beyond, we can communicate to different parts of the world, the people living in different parts of the world. So we need to learn their languages. This way we have a need for learning language. Then we have in languages duality of patterns. Now duality of patterns refers to the double structures of patterns, that something that is different on the surface level, but at the another level we have something different. For example, we have the orthographic form of language, as well as we have spoken form of language, and phonemes are something different from the morphemes, which are usually orthographic symbols, which are usually used in language. Then we have displacement. Yes, we can communicate with the help of language with the people who are not near to us. We can communicate at distance. For example, you are sitting over there, I'm sitting over here, but maybe you are miles away from each other, but again I am communicating with you. So human beings, they have this specific design feature that they communicate, they can talk about the people who are not here. For example, I'm sitting here, but I can talk about any person. For example, I can talk about Noam Chomsky. I can tell you who Noam Chomsky was, what were his ideas and all these things. Noam Chomsky is not here. He is somewhere else. He is at far off place. But again, I can talk about them. So the human beings, they have this specific design feature. They can talk about the things which are not around them, which are at distance from us, like you and me. Then creativity, about again productivity, that as human beings we are produced to, we are able to create a number of sentences, limitless number of sentences. We can talk in any way, we can talk about one thing in different ways. We have this creativity element. We create with the help of language. That's why there are different novels. Every day there are new novels and new stories, new poems are there, new essays are there, so many things, so many news articles are written every day throughout the world. So we are creating things. Then patterning, the language, human language, it has a proper patterning of sounds. For example, we can say that, for example, I can only pick three sounds like ba, e and ta, and I can combine them. I can pattern these sounds to produce a word bit. So combination of sound. So similarly, the words, the morphemes, they are made up of phonemes, pegged and arranged in a certain pattern to make words. And then we have slightly structure dependent. The human language is very much structure dependent. If I say you 8 chocolates, Sara, though because of the words you will get some meaning, but structurally whatever I'm saying is totally wrong. You will say that this is not the correct sentence. The correct sentence should be Sara ate chocolates. So this way we have our language which is totally structure dependent. We need to follow the grammatical rules and grammatical patterns in order to create sentences. So these were some of the design features which are particularly related to human language. Now let's talk about some minor features of language. Then what are the minor features of language are, for example, number 1, language reveals patterns of how mind works. Yes, the way I am talking tells the psychologist the what I am thinking. If I'm not able to use language, how you can know what is my thinking, what I am thinking right now, what kind of person I am. It at the same time how minds works, what happens in different parts of our brain then when we actually use language. Then language is a means for mental and social development. Yes, we not only grow mentally, but we socially grow by using language. How we grow mentally is that the number of as we grow from our infants to the growing up stage. In beginning, the infants having only few sounds, then they learn words, then they learn sentences, and as we keep on growing, we keep on learning. So our mentally we grow with the help of language, and at the same time we socially grow. As we grow up, we learn that what kind of language, what types of structures we need to communicate at different levels, how we can use language formally and informally, what kind of language should I use with elder people and with the young children, or what kind of language should I use while writing my paper and while talking to my friends or while talking to my teacher. I keep on learning. Throughout our life, we keep on learning, and we keep on learning about, because of this learning, we do not only mentally grow, but we socially grow. We get as you know, the people when they grow up, they keep on getting more and more mature. because they learn about these things, they learn about the society, they learn more about the and as soon as they get more knowledge about the world, they keep on growing. And usually how do they acquire this knowledge is with the help of language. Then another feature is language is a property of the individual as well as of the society. Language, my personal language, this is my language, but I'm free to speak whatever I want to, but at the same time it is related to the society as well. This society of Pakistan, for example, Punjabi culture, Punjabi society. So what would be the language associated with to that culture? Punjabi language. Sindhi people, Sindhi language. So and not only the language, it is a possession of individual beings, but at the same time it is possessions of societies as well. It belongs to societies as well. Then language is a predictor of social identity. Yes, the language, it identifies a society. The Punjabi language reflects Punjabi culture. English language reflects English culture. Chinese language reflects Chinese culture. Chinese the way, according to Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the way language and culture, they are linked, they are related. So that's why the language, they reflect the culture associated to them. Then language is a predictor of repetition. Language is used for cultural preservation and transmission. Yes, we have our language, Punjabi language. We know about our Punjabi culture. If I will transfer my language to my next generation, that I'm not only transferring my language, along with that language, I am also transferring my culture as well. So it is a source of cultural preservation. We keep on transferring our culture, our language from generation to generation, and not only the language, but also the culture. It is preserved. But if you remember, if you know that the languages which die, their cultures also die. Now, for example, no more the ancient languages are there. So we do not about their cultures as well. We do not know what were the languages which were spoken during the Stone Age, during the prehistoric, the initial civilization period of the human being. We do not know. So we do not know much about their cultures as well. This is the way we preserve the language and we preserve the culture. We transmit our language to our next generation, and as well as we transmit our culture. Then finally, language can be used by some to exert their power over others. Think, most common example, English language. Today is the most influential and powerful language. This is the I'm not going into the detail of this imperialism and this colonialism. I'm just saying, just this is the fact that the English, they are the dominating society right now. Why? Because their language is dominating everywhere. I'm not talking about the colonial and post-colonial and the different factors working behind it. I'm just saying that with the help of language, how we can control the world. Language is a tool to control the minds of the people. You know, the English psyche, English culture, English knowledge, it is getting promotion everywhere because their language is powerful. So the English society is powerful. So this way, language can be an important tool as well to rule over people, to rule not only physically but to rule mentally as well. So this way, these are some minor features, but once again the important features of language that make language worth mentioning, that make language a most beautiful tool of communication in the world, the most needed tool actually. That brings so many things in our life, that makes our culture, that makes our life properly patterned. So these are some of the patterns, these are some of the features of language. Then language origin. Now, how language originated, we do not know exactly. Question mark is there. If I say that there is a theory of language, there is a theory that exactly tells you truthfully that how language originated. I'm not concerned with religious aspect, that like as Muslims we have certain beliefs that okay, Allah taught us language. Yes, definitely that is another perspective. But with respect to the linguist perspective, there are different theories proposed by different linguists. But at the top level there are two types of views: the monogenesis and polygenesis. Now the monogenesis, mono means one, so monogenesis view of the language origin, they are of the view that initially there was only one language in the world, and all different languages that we have today, they actually meant that first language, it divided into different parts and kept on dividing and dividing, and today what languages we have that actually evolved from one single language. So monogenesis view, where language it was existing in history as a single language and then further divided into so many languages. But on the other hand, polygenesis view or polygenesis types of theories, they believe that initially at the very first level different languages were there, but a number of languages, again not thousands of languages, maybe some languages, some 100 or I'm not talking about the amount, some languages were there but different, not only one, two, but some languages were there, and the recent languages that we have, they actually evolved from these different languages. If you know the history of English language and study, there is a book by C.L. Barber, The Study of Language. It's very gives you very much good knowledge about what are the different types of languages are there, what are their theories about their region. There are they have divided the languages of the world into 7-8 classes, like Indo-Iranian and Germanian, and so many types are there. So polygenesis, it talks about that there were a number of languages, and today's language, they evolved from them. So this is the polygenesis view. But again, these are the two types of views, and inside these views we have different theories, but and hundreds of theories about the origin of language. You can see the books, every linguist, they have their theories, they have their own ideas, but I would refer over here specifically focus on 5 of the theories that talk about the origin of language. These 5 theories, they were actually proposed by Danish linguist Jespersen, Otto Jespersen. And why I have taken these, because these are some of the famous theories which are quite popular with respect to origin of language. So Otto Jespersen, 1860 to 1943 is lifespan, and what were his different theories? Number 1, speech arose through onomatopoeic words, but few of these exist in language. His view was that in beginning, when human beings were there, that was the Stone Age time, or the time when there was no civilization, properly developed civilization that we call today, what actually civilization we call today, and the people, they were there, and what happened, they made use of onomatopoeic words. For example, if they saw a bee with her, because of their buzzing sound, they associated some sounds to mention it. And similarly, buzz, whatever the sound, whatever the phenomena were there, whatever the things were there, but with the help of onomatopoeic words, they originated some of the words. What are onomatopoeic words? They were the sounds and the alphabet sounds and the orthographic symbols, they match, like buzzing, buzz. Now buzz, actually the buzz sound, B, and these are onomatopoeic words. So according to this view, originally there were only the people, that prehistoric man, they start making use of onomatopoeic words, and later on these onomatopoeic words, they kept on increasing, and the new words were added, and this way they acquired the language, developed the language. Another is number 2, speech arose through people making instinctive sounds caused by pain, anger, or emotions. Yes, for example, interjection. So according to this second theory, the language it evolved because of interjection. For example, when they felt pain, the man in the history, when they felt pain, they said, oh, ouch, so these sound, and when they produce these sounds, then they realize that they can produce, then they can use these sounds to refer to different things. Similarly, when they were happy, happiness, emotions, so these sound, actually they provided the basis to evolve the more complicated form of language. This was another theory by Jespersen. Then the third theory, according to the third theory of language origin, universal use of sounds for words of a certain meaning, sound symbolism. For example, ma'am is supposed to reflect the movement of the lips as the mouth approaches to the food, and bye-bye or tata shows the lips and tongue respectively waving goodbye. They said, according to this theory, the way the sounds are uttered, the way the sounds are produced by using different organs, speech organs, they helped the man to make use of language. In beginning, with the help of their movement of different speech organs, they realized that they can produce, and that's why these sounds, they are very much similar to the movement of our speech organs that we make. For example, when I say mama, mama, now mama, the movement of my lips and the other speech organs, they are the way that I am calling my mother. Means that this way we refer to we connect these sound symbols that are produced in different ways, the production of speech sound with the help of my speech organs, and we relate these to the words produced and to the objects referring to. So this way the sound, it originated. Another view was a speech arose as people worked together. Their physical efforts produced communal rhythmical grunts, which in due course developed into chants and thus language. What was there, that when people, they started living together, the social setup was created, the people, they worked together, they then for communication purpose they needed a device, and they for that purpose they invented this device of language. This is another perspective. And finally, another final theory by Jespersen was that the language, how the language originated is, if any single factor was going to initiate human language, it would arise from the romantic side of life. Sounds associated with love, play, poetic feelings, perhaps even song. The way the people, their poetic nature, the people, their personal feelings like love, their romantic feelings, their desire to love someone, their desire to show their affection for someone, or even to show anger for someone. These desires or these emotions, they made them to invent a tool, and that tool was language. So these were some of the theories about the origin of language. You can find many theories on the internet. Just Google the word origin of language and you can have so many theories about the origin of language. But once again, to limitize myself, I presented with only few, so that you have, basically to give you a need to know about this origin, that how this language that we are talking about from so many days, what it is, how it is originated, how it was evolved. Now today's that we are going to have a recap that was of levels of language. I think I discussed them shortly in very brief form in my lecture 2 or 3, but today again, and then in the all previous lectures we discussed every level in detail, but again a summary of all that levels of language. Again, this is a bottom-up approach towards the levels of language. This is typically known as this idea of levels of language is with the help of presented with the bottom-up approach. This is the proper approach to present these levels of language. And if you look at the arrow moving from bottom to up, if you look at the arrow moving from bottom to up, so showing that the lowest level is that of least level, that is the at bottom. And as we keep on moving upwards, we get more and more and more complicated forms. We start from the single human sound that are produced by human beings, that are dealt with phonetics. Then categorization of sounds according to languages, phonology, and then again combination of sounds to produce morphemes and words, morphology. Then again arrangement of words in sentences according to some grammatical rules, syntax. And then at the last level, getting the meaning of these structure of sentences, getting meanings. Now these both types of meanings, the meanings derived from the exact literal meanings of the word, or from the intended meanings, with the meanings of that sentences in relation to its context, that are pragmatics. So this way the study of language, it moves from bottom to up level, from the simplest to complicated level. So this way the language, it keeps on developing from simplest to complicated form. So let's see what are these different levels individually, what we have studied about them. Phonetics. The phonetics, the simplest definition, the study of articulation, transmission and the perception of speech sound. And in that regard, that because phonetics talks about three things: articulation, so articulatory phonetics; transmission, so transmission is acoustic phonetics; and perception of speech sound is auditory phonetics. Now the idea that I gave you was that because this sound, its transmission, production process is not that much simple. There is a body that produces sounds, there is a body that receives the sound, and in between there is a medium with these sounds waves travel. So if you look at the figure, the sound waves, they are traveling from the body that produced them to the body that receives them. So this way we have three setups. We have the body that produced them related to articulation process, the waves traveling through the medium, that is acoustic phonetics, and the waves received by the ears, that is auditory phonetics. If we see what were there in articulatory phonetics, it was the study of the way of the vocal organs, they are used to produce sound. And with respect to this articulatory phonetics, we studied about different organs of speech. What are the speech organs that we use, human beings use to produce different kinds of sounds. We talked about manner of speech production. We talked about the places of speech production. We talked about voicing, because these are the features who created the difference between the different sounds. The place we use to produce the sound, it changes one sound from the other. If I use the lips to produce sound, labial sounds are produced. If I use the lips and teeth, then the labiodental sounds are produced. So the organs that we use to produce sound, the manner we produce sound, the places we use to produce sound, they change the nature of that sound. Then this was all about that was the thing that we studied in articulatory phonetics. But once again, there was some acoustic phonetics, the way the sounds are transmitted. Sounds are transmitted inside the medium. And if you remember, we studied that physical properties of these, because the sound, they travel in the forms of waves, sound and sound waves. And acoustic phonetics, it is all about the sound waves, the nature of sound waves, the properties of sound waves, the characteristics of sound waves, and how these sound waves, what is their nature, how they are produced, how they are travel. So this was all the concern of acoustic phonetics. And then we talked about about the nature of sound waves, and then about phenomena which are very much related and important with respect to phonetics. That was the oscillation, frequency, amplitude and frequency that are counted to calculate different things with related to sound. Then in auditory phonetics, how we receive sound and how we perceive sound. And we talked about ear, the complete internal structure of ear, how the ear it is designed to receive sound signals and to transmit these sound signals to the nerves. And the nerves take the sound messages to brain, who interprets the messages, who decodes the sound symbols into certain messages. And the way we know the meanings of these these sounds. Then we talked about the English, specifically English phonetics, comprised of 26 alphabet but 44 sounds. 44 sounds, out of that 20 vowel sounds and 24 consonant sounds. This was the chart that I used to depict what are the vowel sounds in English, from short vowels, long vowels, the diphthongs, and then we also talked about the triphthongs as well. Then this was the table we used to talk about English consonant sound. The different consonant sound, they are mentioned according to their places and manner of articulation, like pa, ba, ta, da, ma, na, ka, ga, ang. These are all the consonant sound, and we use this table to categorize these different consonant sounds. Then in phonology, different from phonetics, because phonology talks about sound symbols, talked about human speech sound, but in relation to a particular language. And this phonological knowledge, it helps us to produce, it tells us that how we produce sounds which form meaningful utterances, because in every language there are a number of sounds, and that sounds combinations are used to produce the meaningful pattern. Then how we recognize a foreign accent, because of because there are certain sounds which are different in the accent of another person. So this way we can recognize the accent, and to know what is or not a sound in one's language, what are the accepted sound symbols with respect to different languages and what are non-accepted. They are still the sounds, but they are usually not the part of that language. And then how different sound strings, they are joined together to represent something. In phonology, the smallest segment was phoneme. The phoneme is the minimal unit of sound that is not physically, that cannot be produced physically segment, but actually it is the abstraction. And we talked about different phonemes like ta, ba, da. These are the phonemes, the individual. And then inside the phonemes, related to phonemes, we talked about allophones and mini pairs. Allophones are the variations within a single phoneme sound. For example, we talked about pa. The one phoneme is pa, p, which is represented by p, but its two variations are pa and pa. So as in spin and pin, in one we have explosive p. So these are two allophones, and the allophones. And then we talked about mini pairs. Minimal pairs are words that are identical except for one sound, like pit and bit. They are only different from one sound, that is pa and ba. All other structure is same, so this combination makes a minimal pair. In morphology, we talked about what morphology is. Morphology is the study of patterning of words, that how the words, they are formed within and across languages. So we can say that morphology is actually the science of words. But traditionally, if you focus on the word morphology, it is made up of the word study of morpheme. So what morpheme is? Morpheme is the way the phoneme is the smallest minimal unit in phonology. Similarly, the morpheme is the smallest minimal unit in morphology. It is a minimal unit which cannot be broken down further of meaning or grammatical function. For example, look at the word truthfulness, made up of three morphemes: truth, full, and ness. But at the same time, remember the morphemes, they should be meaningful. For example, we can have truth as one morpheme, but I cannot say the true, TRU, I can take it as morpheme, because that is not meaningful. So then we talked about the types of morphemes. Before that, word and morpheme relationship. because actually there are certain confusion that, so usually when we talk about morphology as study of words, we actually think about these words as morphemes, but no, words are something bigger than morphemes. There is a hierarchical relationships. Words are at bigger level, morphemes are at lower level, and words, they are comprised of morphemes. For example, one word can have one morpheme, bank, one word, but inside that one word two morphemes, childish, child and ish. Forgiveness, one word, but three morphemes, child, forgive and ness. So this way words are at bigger level, and morphemes, they compose, they are joined together to make words. Then we talked about types of morphemes. We studied free morphemes and bound morphemes, and inside free morphemes we have two categories, lexical and functional morphemes, and inside bound morphemes we had two categories of derivational and inflectional morphemes. If you want some more knowledge about these types, then you should go back to the lecture on morphology, and means you should have certain, you can revise your bit knowledge of what these types of morphemes are. Then syntax, and again moving to up level. Now sound, they were combined to create words, morphology, and now words, they are arranged in certain orders to create sentences. And so syntax is all of the way how the word, they are combined together to make sentences or phrases. And in definition is that putting things together in an orderly manner. That is all about syntax. In syntax, we talked about the paradigmatic view and syntagmatic view. Paradigmatic view is that what the sentence, what the set structure is made up of. It is made up of sentences, it is made up of clauses, and it is made up of phrases. So sentence, if we define it individually, sentence is basically a string of words that follow the grammatical rules of a language. They have the proper rules to follow to form to make a sentence, and sentence is something that provides us with a complete thought. That is something that makes a sentence different from a phrase. Sentence is a complete thought, and it is made up of phrases. And phrases, clauses, second level, a group of words that have a subject, a verb, and that subject verb agreement part is there. Whereas in phrase, again, how they are different from clauses and sentences, that phrases, they are made up of two or few more words, and they have a subject. Usually they are only at subject or object places. But if they have a verb, then what makes them different is that there is no agreement between the subject and verb. That's the way we differentiate phrases from clauses. And phrases and clauses, they make sentences. So that was the paradigmatic nature of syntax. In syntactic view, you know the relationship at the structural level, and with respect to that, we talked about syntactic analysis that deals with the study of how sentences are structured. Throws us a hint that syntactic research should not only concern on how sentences are merged out of their parts. Mean not that syntax is not about the paradigmatic nature, but it is also how the sentences, they are arranged, how they are patterned. Mean we need to focus the syntactic analysis as well. Syntactic analysis, I mentioned so many techniques are available, but with reference to our lectures, we talked about immediate constituent analysis, ultimate constituent analysis, phrase structure grammar, transformational generative grammar, case grammar, stratificational grammar, and techmimics. These are the 7 approaches that we used to analyze sentences. And for your practice, you should learn how, with respect to these different these analysis procedures, you can analyze sentences. Look at this one example that I provided over here. With respect to the immediate constituent analysis, this is one of the way we can analyze the sentences. For example, you can talk about the sentence at the top level, and inside the sentence we can have noun phrase and verb phrase. Inside the noun phrase we can have determiner and another noun phrase, and in another noun phrase we can have an article and a noun, or an appositive phrase and a noun. Then in verb phrase we can have a verb phrase and a determiner. Verb phrase can be further made up of verb and another verb phrase. And verb phrase, again, it can be divided into prepositional and noun phrase parts. Mean within one structure, about so many things are there, and this way you can identify the different parts of sentences with respect to different syntactic analysis techniques. Then when all the structure part is done, then the top level of the language is concerned, that is semantics and pragmatics. Both are concerned with the study of meanings, but at the same time their working field is different. Semantics is about the study of meanings, where the meanings, they are directly contained inside the words, or the meanings, they are already related with respect to lexical items, or what you call words. And we talked about the importance of meaning, because to know language, it is very much important to know its meanings. If you do not, if you have up to the 5th level, you have all the knowledge. You know what phonetics is, you know what phonology is, you know what morphology is, and even with you can arrange words in a perfect structure to create a sentence. But if you don't know what does it mean, what is the meaning that is conveyed by this sentence, that your all levels knowledge, it is useless. Because language is not about structures as well. Structures are only the ways or the forms that we use to convey our meaning. The meanings are the of the prior importance. The way I can say that this is the functional part that is important rather than the structural part. So structures are important, but structures are used to convey meanings. So the meaning part is more important. And to understand a language, we need meanings. Now there are meanings, that there are the meanings of the words and the morphemes that composes them. Then words, they are combined to make sentences and phrases. And when we study the meanings at these levels, they are usually the semantic meaning. But sometimes we study the meanings of words, phrases, clauses or sentences with relation to the context. Either the linguistic context or the situational context. If we study the meaning with relation to context, then such study of meaning falls into the category of pragmatics. Now that we talked about in pragmatics. Then inside the semantics, we talked about 2 levels, lexical semantics and sentential semantics. Lexical semantics, as the name makes it clear, it is about the meanings of words. How the meanings, they are inside the words, how they are related with the words. That knowledge is known as lexical semantics. Whereas when we talk about the meanings at phrases and sentences level, then that is under the category of sentential semantics. And finally, pragmatics, the study of meanings in context dependent on the intentions of participants in conversational exchange. Because sometimes we say something, but we mean something different. The words that are used to convey our idea, the words, they are not conveying the exact idea, rather we need to relate that strings of words to get the meaning. And context is important to understand the pragmatic meanings. Without the we cannot understand the pragmatic meanings without the context. So then we have defined different types of context, like we can have linguistic context and we can have situational context as well. And finally, what we did in pragmatics was that we talked about the different theories of pragmatics, like speech act theory, the relevance theory, the cooperation theory and argumentation theory. That was all about pragmatics. So this was that we have done so far with respect to language and levels of language. If you want detail on the levels of language, definitely you have now these all what I have quickly recapped, whatever I have quickly been did you have these knowledge, we have studied this so far. But again, because now we are done with the levels of language, we are moving towards another aspect, to different other areas of linguistics. Now we will talk about the development of language, how the children they develop language, how they acquire language, how they learn language. Then we talked about the language relationship with society. We will discuss about some famous schools of linguistics in that are there in linguistics, and we'll talk about some famous linguists and their works as well. So in our remaining lectures. So see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.